things first. I'm Jenna Wolfe. That's the Hall of Famer, Cris Carter. That's Nick Wright. Jokes. Lots of jokes this morning on the show.
Absolutely.
Lots of jokes.
I only heard facts.
Nick said if he's going to carry you on the show, you got to take your shoes off.
What is going... First of all,
Still hurts me.
you couldn't carry all the papers on this desk, much less me, around the office a little bit. So I appreciate the notion that I was needing to
Hell of
carry.
a way to start the morning. Good morning, everybody.
Yeah! Boom! That bad.
I guess I got to hold that L this morning. 6:31 a.m.
It was a late night for Nick and for CC and for myself. A lot of late night basketball last
these
night.
10:30 starts
I know, it's not
got it.
fair.
Come on, NBA. 10:30 East Coast starts are rude to America.
Yeah, well, my basketball game starts at 9 tonight, so then I'll have that on the app.
Okay.
Got your son in the lineup tonight.
Oh, okay, good deal.
So we got basketball.
We got a lot going on.
We do have a lot going on. We'll get to CC's basketball game shortly after our show ends, but let's start with a late night
Shortly after our show ends.
NBA basketball. Early morning of analysis is what I like to call it. We start with Game 4 between the Jazz and the Thunder. Another game without cohesion between the big three. Another game where Russell Westbrook struggled to hit shots. And another loss. Jazz go on to win this 113-96 thanks to 33 points out of the rookie Donovan Mitchell for Utah. So the Jazz now up 3-1 in this series. CC, I'll start with you. How has this Utah team been able to dominate the Thunder? Is it more what they're doing? Is it more what the Thunder are not doing?
Well, at the beginning and end of the day, the Utah Jazz are a better basketball team, Jenna. Now, they might not have the individual stars. They definitely wouldn't have the accolades of the players on OKC. But it is a team sport. And what Utah is doing is team-oriented. Now, we can talk about Donovan Mitchell. We can talk about Rudy Gobert as the center. We can talk about the coach. But collectively, how they do things. What I saw in the game last night was typically almost every shot Utah shot the ball, they took at least 3 passes. If it wasn't in transition, they took at least 3 passes before. So they got better shots. So they're used to doing this on a regular basis. We don't give Utah a lot of attention. We've talked about OKC on this from the beginning of the season, before the season, actually with Melo, Hoodie Melo. And I think that because we saw Hoodie Melo, we thought that him and Paul George joining up with Russell, like there's no chance that Utah can upset them in the first round. I wouldn't consider this an upset. If you look at the teams who's played the best basketball over the course of 6 months, it would be the Utah Jazz. So for those people who are surprised, it is a team sport, and Utah is a better team.
And I said when the bracket came out, Jazz in 6, and it looks like I understated them because they're looking like Jazz in 5. How is it happening? Cece, your point about the lack of passing for Oklahoma City compared to the passing for Utah, Oklahoma City went from 10 minutes left in the second quarter to 20 seconds left in the third quarter with 0 assists. You played 2 quarters of basketball, playoffs, the biggest game of your season, and you have 0 assists. You have what we're seeing right now is, yes, Utah's better. Listen, Utah, since Rudy Gobert came back, I keep bringing it up, they're 30-8, the second best record in basketball, the #1 defense in basketball, the #1 net rating in basketball over that stretch. So that's going on. While Donovan Mitchell is exploding onto the scene, you did a good job of making sure early in the year we keyed on this rookie out of Louisville in Utah. Now everyone's taking notice of him.
Right, and it's not that I thought that he should be rookie of the year. I just think that sometimes that we start talking about certain people and certain subjects or certain awards, and we just eliminate the rest of the field. And especially when you have someone like Donovan Mitchell, but this was a throwaway season for Utah. All right, they traded Gordon Hayward. They weren't going to be a playoff team. They're rebuilding.
Right.
Oh no, they drafted a kid out of Louisville, and there's no need to rebuild because he's an instant success, and it warranted getting more attention.
And all he's done in these playoffs is join Wilt, MJ, and George Mikan, along with Lou Alcindor, now Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, as the only rookies to ever average more than 27 points a game in at least 4 games of a playoff series. So that's the Utah side of it. The OKC side of it is their stars have not been stars. Russ has been a no-show in the fourth quarters. And in last night, which you can argue is the single biggest basketball game Russ has played certainly in the last 2 years, and one of the, take out the NBA Finals, one of the 3 biggest basketball games he's ever played in. He made it personal with Ricky Rubio, and in his attempt to win the battle, he and his team got massacred in the war. And the ripple effects of losing last night, and I believe losing this series, will be felt for this Thunder team for some time.
The one thing we talked about going into this series, and you made a really good point of it, was that when the Thunder, it's not consistency with what you're getting with this team. They're either great when they're all hitting on all cylinders, or they're not. But that greatness and the randomness of the greatness should have been enough to beat a Utah team, which was never going to cap out at the top, but which is going to be steady, good across the way. And what we've seen is the Thunder have never gotten there. They never peaked, right? With the three guys they put in there together, they never really hit their potential, and you saw maybe a few glimpses of that during the regular season. We haven't seen that in the postseason.
And you don't have to look further than their point guard. In my playing basketball, at a very, very young age, as a point guard, the coach always taught me this because I was a fiery guy. I used to get upset. I was a bad loser. And he used to tell me, you can't play basketball like you play football. And if you're going to be the point guard, if I'm going to give you the ball, you have to control your temper and you have to control the temperament of the team. You are an extension of me on the court. And that's what, with Russell Westbrook, you can see that. He lost control. His team lost control. So until Russell decides that he's going to control the tempo in an NBA game and he's going to control the temperament to his team, I don't see Russell Westbrook ever winning an NBA championship because of the lack of control or temperament for his team.
And Russ, listen, Russ had 3 assists yesterday. That's the fewest assists he's had in a year and a half. It's the biggest game. I have been a Russell Westbrook defender. This is my second favorite player to watch in the league and one of my 5 favorite players just viscerally to watch ever. I have opined on big picture things, saying if you have kids, Russell is the player you should have them emulate as far as going hard all the time. I love Russ, but I have to be honest, and he has to be honest, that at some point, wanting to win and trying your best, while important, is not necessarily as important as, to use an old cliche, are you going to work smart or are you going to work hard? Everybody knows Russ works hard. Man, he has a hard time working smart.
Look at the temperament LeBron James took in Lance Stevenson and all the things that Lance did to him. Look at LeBron continually control his attitude, which in turn his team never got off point what they should be doing because he stays in control of that. He doesn't let all these outside influences. Russell makes it a point that, I'm going to shut that thing down for Ricky Rubio. Well, listen, Ricky Rubio is only a part of your problem, man. Why didn't he say anything about Donovan Mitchell? Why didn't he say, hey, man, we need to shut this other guy down?
Because he was referring to himself and what he could do and not what was affecting the team the most. And in so doing, he found himself with 4 fouls, unable to help the team, and then unable to do anything
And
himself.
Not only himself in trouble, but it got the team in trouble.
And in one of the most shocking stats, I know it's a small sample size, but playoff series are small sample size. It's 4 games. So it's over half the series, and it might be 80% of the series if Utah wins the next game. The Oklahoma City Thunder in this series, with Russell Westbrook on the court, are being outscored by 13 points per 100 possessions. With Russell Westbrook off the court, they are outscoring Utah by 13 points per 100 possessions. They are 26 points better in this series with Russ on the bench than Russ playing. If you told me that going into it, I'd have said, well, I guess it's a sweep, and I guess Russ was playing hurt. Now, I know he had extra tape on his shoulders. He says he doesn't have an injury, but whether he's dealing with a nagging injury or not, it does not justify nor does it explain his level, the lack of assists, his erratic play, and what Jenna alluded to. You can't get 4 fouls in the first half because you're in a measuring contest with Ricky Rubio.
A one-on-one with Ricky Rubio.
You just can't.
That's not how you play playoff basketball.
Ricky Rubio won that battle, and ultimately, you talked about winning the battle, losing the war. Paul George is going to leave OKC, and Russell can look nowhere. He can blame no one else. Don't blame the city. Don't blame the fans. Don't blame the organization. Blame yourself, because this is going to be a trend. KD said a lot of things, but there was some truth in saying about playing with Russell Westbrook, it wasn't as much fun. Paul George has experienced that. Melo has experienced that. Like, so now what does it do to the organization and other potential free agents? You know, are you marginalized because you can't win a championship by going to OKC?
And we're going to get into that part of this extensively. I want to say one other thing about Donovan Mitchell. The most points by a rookie in a playoff game with 0 turnovers in NBA history. That's what he did yesterday. And I mean, he was, for in a series.
I mean, mention again the names he passed. Not only he broke Karl Malone's rookie scoring record
for the Jazz.
Yes.
But he joins, how about this? Rookies through 4 playoff games have at least 110 points. Here's the list. Donovan Mitchell, Michael Jordan, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. So you have Donovan Mitchell and 2 of the top 3 ever. That's how he's announced himself to the NBA when his team needs him as a scoring option. That was as big of an environment as you can be in. He stepped up. He's been the best player in a series with multiple Hall of Famers.
Tremendous interview after the game. He got overwhelmed by the crowd.
It was great.
You know, I mean, the crowd and the noise, he couldn't even answer the question, just watching him and everything, and just how pure it was, and says, wow, look at this young superstar really embracing the stage compared to these other 3 superstars not being able to get their game on.
Donovan Mitchell and the Utah Jazz can close it out Wednesday night in Game 5. We'll take a break from basketball. Coming up next, how old will Tom Brady be when he retires? Will it be 42 or 142? We'll discuss both options next on First Things First.
Hey everybody, Nick Wright here, and before the show moves along, I want to tell you about an exciting new show. It's called the Fox Sports Daily Brief, and it's available only on Facebook Watch. Look, we all know everyone's busy, but the Fox Sports Daily Brief takes the biggest stories in the world of sports and delivers them to you in one video right on Facebook. It's all you need to know about sports from the biggest stars at Fox Sports. So log on to Facebook, search Fox Sports Daily Brief, and look for new episodes every weekday. So log on to Facebook, search Fox Sports Daily Brief, and look for new episodes every weekday. Now, back to the show.
If I was Tom Brady's BFF, and I'm not sure guys have BFFs, I'd be like, you see what happens when you go to Qatar instead of voluntary off-season football practice? Rumors upon rumors upon rumors, Tom.
Best friend forever.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, man, we do best friend, but ain't no forever.
Oh, I think you're Nick's BFF. Tom Brady retirement talk has begun to sweep the nation as a result of him missing practice. Well, now Tom Brady's agent, Don Yee, has chimed in, and he says Brady will play this season and into his mid-40s, or until he feels he isn't playing at a championship level. Well, that should just about settle every single thing. Cece, how much should Brady's plans impact the Patriots' draft plans? Because we all know, or we think we know, that they are looking at a potential quarterback or a backup for Tom Brady at some point.
Well, first thing, the fans should know that that's Tom Brady talking. Compared to all the reports that come out since the Super Bowl, Tom hasn't said anything but support and a couple messages to friends who left. Malcolm Butler left. He sent out a message to him. Amendola left, going to Miami, sent a message to him. Now, all these other rumors, Tom Brady's not at the offseason training. Tom Brady hasn't committed to playing. His agent spoke, so that's Tom Brady speaking through him. His agent couldn't say that unless Tom Brady clarified it. And Tom Brady basically laid down the gauntlet. Forget what you're hearing. The same thing I told you last time I spoke, I want to play into my mid-40s. I want to play beyond this contract. That's what they stated yesterday. And it should affect the Patriots in how they go after a quarterback, because it shouldn't force them into taking their 2 number ones and moving all the way up in the draft. Because if Tom Brady's going to play a couple years, there's probably a couple other quarterbacks, because we've talked about the top 4 guys. And after that, Lamar Jackson, a couple other guys. Lamar does have a first-round grade on him, but there's about 3 or 4 guys who have a second-round grade on them. And that's about the threshold for Belichick as far as drafting a quarterback. So I could see him drafting a quarterback in the first round or waiting till the second round, knowing that Tom is going to be there for at least the next couple years to be able to help this guy cut his teeth in the NFL.
Listen, what this means is the idea, whether it was a pipe dream or not, that the Patriots could be at the NFL draft, see a guy like Josh Rosen is still on the board at number 9 and say, guys, 23, 31, a number 2, move up to 9, go get him. Like, should we go do that? That's now out the window. Like, now you are...
Well, I don't know if that's out the window. I believe that the Patriots have a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C. I believe plan A is if a guy falls in the first round, they will take him in the first round. I believe plan B would be to draft a quarterback, which they like, in the second round. Plan C would be, man, if they see a guy on draft day in the moment, to go up and get him. I believe the other plans are probably more concrete and more likely to happen.
Sure. So I'm sure they have
Not to cut you off.
No, you're fine. I'm sure they have a contingency for everything.
Yes.
I just think it is much less likely that plan C now comes into place because Brady is saying, I want to be there. We know Brady's still at the top of the league. He was league MVP this year. And when you need a left tackle,
yes,
when you need help defensively, when you need a wide receiver potentially, to spend that much draft capital on a guy that you hope does not see the field in 2018.
Compared to getting 2 or 3 starters immediately.
Exactly. But there's one other thing that because when the previous report came from a guy, Cece, I know you respect a ton, Adam Schefter. And the day we talked about it, you said, if Schefter's reporting this, that means he got it from New England, that Schefter's close with the organization. So that's what I found as the subtext interesting part here, is Schefter's not a guy that makes up reports or guesses. Someone within the Patriots made the point to tell Adam Schefter, knowing who they're telling, Tom Brady hasn't committed to playing next year.
Right. And the question might have gone like this. Tom's not here this offseason. Are you guys concerned? To be like, no, we're not concerned. Well, has Tom committed to playing this year? Has he communicated that to you guys? And whoever answered, no, he hasn't. So then they went with that report. But Tom had never said he wasn't considered playing. So there was no need for him to say anything after the season because his plans, besides outside of Tom versus time, that people trying to draw some things from the end of it, the conclusion of it, that, wow, Tom might be done playing.
I have just a little bit of a hard time believing the entire organization is sitting around deciding what their draft plans are going to be, waiting to hear if Tom Brady's going to come back and play or not. Like, oh, now that we heard he's going to play, maybe we don't have to use all of our picks to move up and get a quarterback.
Well, let's just do the counterfactual to it. If the report this morning was Don Yee said Tom Brady is leaning towards retirement, would that all of a sudden drastically affect their draft plans?
Yes.
Yes. So I think while you're correct in this regard, this news, because it's what they expected, is not drastically affecting their draft plans. This further solidifies, I think, the idea that they do not want to package multiple picks to move up and get a quarterback, which I think they would have done if Brady had walked away.
And, Jenna, you're right. They're not sitting around concerned, man, Tom Brady, is he going to be here? Not going to be here? What are we going to do? No, New England knows. And that's why I'm always concerned about information that comes out about New England. You have to be careful. This has been the most strategic, the most private organization. And then now all of a sudden in the last 3 months, we're getting leaks out like it's the White House. I mean, everyone's squealing over there. And I know it's not the same place, all right? I know it's the same place that I've come accustomed to with Bill Belichick and information. So with that, I believe New England does have a plan. With that, I do believe that New England, they know more, and Tom has talked to them and clarified the situation.
And one of the things we are going to talk about is Lamar Jackson, the former Heisman winner, who they seemingly are interested in. He came in, they had a good workout. We're going to discuss if he could be a potential and if he would fit in with the organization coming up. But on the other side, why is Kevin Durant lurking in the bad parts of the internet again? How many times do I have to tell you, KD, not the best place to be? Next on First Things First.
Would you rather be a blog boy or an IG comment lurker?
Moving on to one of the more ridiculous yet water cooler-esque topics of the morning, Kevin Durant and his fun with social media. Yesterday, Durant's Instagram account, quote, liked a comment. I don't know why I said quote. Liked a comment saying Westbrook was the problem. They had a good team in reference to the reason Durant left the Thunder. He later told reporters that was a, quote, accident. Right. Because this seems totally out of character for someone who admitted to having fake Twitter accounts this past year. Nick, what do you make of this?
All right, listen, this is not the biggest deal in the world, but Kevin Durant, in my opinion, is not telling the truth here because that is not how Instagram works. Like, just real quick, he's like, I was just scrolling through my feed, and I like to comment. But that's not how Instagram works. Like, you don't see the comments, all of them, unless you
click that first.
So listen, this was a quote. There was a picture, like we do on our FS1 accounts, like a picture of Donovan Mitchell, or was it Donovan Mitchell? It's Kevin Durant and Giannis. I'm sorry. And Giannis gave a quote about Milwaukee, and Durant had the quote, he needs to worry about himself, not about the city. And it was a comment on that post that he liked. So what happened?
Well, tell
here?
people. And the comment was.
The comment was that guys started arguing with each other about KD leaving OKC.
Right.
One guy said subpar LMFAO. The problem was Westbrook. They had a good bleeping team. That's what was said. Listen, man, we know what happened here. Like, KD, for some reason or another, is reading comments about people debating his decision, and I'm postulating this part of it. I mean, well, you forgot again what account he was in and clicked that little heart button. It's not the biggest deal in the world, but he's not telling the truth on what happened here.
Now, you mean, Nick, because sometimes I have a problem on social media. You've helped me out a lot because I got unusually large hands and unusually long thumbs. So you mean just accidentally my thumb couldn't hit something? When I'm on Twitter, that does happen. I have to go back.
No, it's like 2 steps to get to it. You can't just do it by mistake. You have to go into the comments.
If he had liked the post,
so some of the stuff that I liked for you, when I accidentally hit it, and then I went and
Thank you for clarifying that. We weren't sure.
And so, yeah, I mean, it's just, it is not, on Twitter, you could accidentally like a post. But he was within the comments of it. And I'm not going to go play, pop psychologist, but it's a weird thing that, pardon me, KD is really interested in. All right, what are these other anonymous people on the internet saying about me, and what do I think of it? And to get deep into the comments of other people's arguments about you from afar, listen, man, I'm not 1% as famous as Kevin Durant. I don't know what that scrutiny's like, but it seems like it would be it's exhausting for me to read comments people send to me. I can't imagine if you are seeking out comments on someone else's post debating you and your decisions.
Yeah, no, you can't. You could never win. And given the bad look that he had this summer, like if I was him, I would clean up the social media part or limit how I participated.
Maybe the 0 dark 30 that LeBron does? Well, maybe engage in that for the postseason, KD?
What about whatever's going on OKC? Man, you left there. Like, just leave it behind you.
How about the fact that you already came out in an interview and said, I don't care about anything except just playing basketball. Like, I don't want to do anything but go home, play video games, and just play basketball, and that's all I want to do. Except troll or read through other people's comments who commented on the first comment's original comment, and then scroll down 2 buttons and then like. But besides that, just the basketball.
Jenna is an Instagram expert. I should have allowed you to explain how it worked. I apologize.
You cut me off a little bit. I had a whole tutorial, like 3/4 of these pages are just about how I'm going to explain to Nick.
By the way, if you're on IG, at Jenna Wolfe, if you want to see some odd workouts that involve upside-down push-ups and Jenna setting up the camera in the normal people set up a camera in the corner, a ghost videographer. All right, now here's my 33rd burpee of the day, America.
Are we done?
We're done.
Awesome.
Feel good.
Let us move on.
And Jenna will read the comments, too.
I will read every single one of your comments from my ghost
Jenna
account.
is in the mentions, okay?
Right.
But for yours out there, y'all can slide into her DMs and everything.
No, you can't.
Oh, you can't do that?
I don't know what that means.
Oh.
America, you can't slide into Jenna's DMs.
Oh, okay.
Guys, can we just
I'm
move
sorry.
on?
I got to take another class.
Okay.
KD, help me.
Katie's the last person to help you.
Oh, okay. Whoever's handling this stuff.
Is fake people. Sticking with Westbrook's Thunder, basically sticking with anything other than sliding. Thunder lost their 3rd straight playoff game against the Jazz last night. Many questions swelling about the future of this Thunder team. Will Russ be unhappy next season? That wouldn't be good. Will Paul George leave in free agency? Even worse. Will Melo stay? Talk about a disaster. Nick, what does the Game 4 loss mean for the future of the Thunder?
It's disastrous. I mean, I'm not trying to be Chicken Little here, but I mean, it's not an extreme to say the sky's falling when the sky's actually falling. And this is now what the future looks like for OKC in the short term. Paul George is leaving. You joked about it, but it's accurate. Carmelo's going to opt in to $28 million next year.
Which could almost be worse than Paul George leaving.
So you're not, it ain't great.
Big bad.
Big bad. So you are not going to be able to drastically improve your team this offseason because of the cap space situation. and you're losing your second best player, who in these playoffs has been your best player. That then takes you to the season after this, or the season after next, pardon me, when Carmelo will be off your books 2 years from now. Well, then all of a sudden your best player is a 31-year-old point guard who has made his entire career based on his athleticism. And the history of those guys past the age of 30, 31 ain't great. And so the reason we talked about the Thunder, if we ranked the teams we talked about this year, it'd be Cavs 1, Golden State 2, Thunder 3. It was because they have compelling personalities and because we knew how important this year was for the future of Russ's ability to compete for championships. I think they've squandered it with how they've played in this series and how they played this year, which makes how they played in this series not surprising. Paul George is leaving, Carmelo is staying, and Russ is not getting younger. That's a disaster for them.
Let's look at the result. Harden was on a team that scored 50 points. He used to be on OKC. Kevin Durant was the MVP of last year's final. He used to be on OKC. So he just talked about their current situation. What they've been through in the last 6, 7 years as a franchise don't recover from that. After going to the finals with these three players, you would think going into the future, man, their future was bright. Playing against LeBron James, losing to LeBron, like, oh, man, their future's very bright. Harden left. KD left. Now they're stuck with Melo another year, and because of Russ last year, they're basically stuck with Russ too because he opted in
and signed a major contract.
Yeah, so they're stuck, and unfortunately, that their general manager, I believe, is one of the best in the league, and they do a great job of selecting players. You don't select 3 Hall of Famers in that short a window unless you're doing things the right way. So he's not going to get a chance to try to make that roster better, and it's unfortunate to him. And I believe that the coach, you should look at the coach, Billy Donovan. Like, is he an NBA coach? Does he develop players? He's had some good players, but what has he won? Billy Donovan, to me, is part of the problem. Russ's temperament is part of the problem. That deal that Melo has, Hoodie Melo, that's the last time we've seen him. This summer, when he was playing in 24-hour fitness, that was the last good Melo that we saw. That's a problem.
And in 2019, so again, we're assuming Paul George is gone because Paul George is gone. And in 2019, when Melo is finally off your books, you're still paying $64 million to a 31-year-old Russell Westbrook and to Steven Adams. And while Steven Adams is a good player, he's not a $26 million a year player, which is what they will be staring at, or $28 million paying him then. Like you mentioned the general manager. They, in 3 years, without ever once winning the lottery, without ever once having the #1 pick of a draft, in 3 years, they drafted Durant, Russ, Serge Ibaka, and James Harden. To do that and to forget winning a championship, forget going to multiple finals, to do that and to win 1 finals game, and for that to be the pinnacle of it all, is disastrous for any franchise, much less one of the smallest markets in the NBA.
CC brought up 2 reasons why. Maybe it's the head coach, Billy Donovan. Maybe it's Russell Westbrook, the way he plays, the style he plays. We thought Russell Westbrook and James Harden were going to have equal responsibilities. Get used to bringing in another superstar and see how you can play with them. Well, Harden's been able to do it seamlessly. Russ hasn't. Would you put more blame on Billy Donovan or more blame on Russell Westbrook?
No, both of them to blame. Russ had that style before Billy got there. But as a coach, you have to develop a style and continue to develop great players. You have to add other things to their game. One thing LeBron did with Spoelstra. LeBron stopped playing on the perimeter. He started playing in the low post when he went to Miami. Now that we've seen him come back to Cleveland, he's playing the point guard. His game has evolved. Now, he hadn't had the best coaching in the world, but they have pushed him to being a better player. Russ is not a better player. His shot selection is not better. His inability as a point guard to make other players on the team better. So that's a responsibility of the organization and of the head coach.
Well, and this hurts my heart to do, but I got to be honest. Like, we're on here every day. I got to react to what I saw. When we're talking about Russ, forget the fact that he's going to turn 30 next season. Forget the giant contract. We're just talking about Russ, the defending league MVP, who just averaged another triple-double. One of the things I like to do when people talk about is LeBron the best player in the league is say, okay, do this thought exercise with me. Take the player you think is the best player, flip he and LeBron's teams, and tell me which team got worse, got better. Well, let's do that with Russ for a second. Which great player do you flip Russ and them 1-for-1, and the Thunder get worse and that team gets better? If you flip KD and Russ, does Golden State get better? Of course not. Does OKC get better? Yes. Yeah. If you flip Harden and Russ, does Houston get better? No bleeping way. Does OKC get better? Yeah, absolutely. Giannis. How about Ben Simmons right now? What about in this series, Donovan Mitchell? Like, if you think about the teams that are good in the playoffs right now, if you took their best player and traded them 1-for-1 for Russ, which of those teams are better? Miami? Sure, because Miami doesn't have a best player.
Right.
Like, Indiana? Maybe. Like, if Russ is on that tier, like, we have to
Oladipo got a lot better when he left Russ. He went from being a player to being a superstar.
And so it's hard to defend what Russ has done in this series. It's hard to defend his inability to evolve throughout the year or in this series. And because of that, sometimes life ain't fair. Paul George is going to leave. And the next time OKC signs a major free agent will be the first time since that team went to Oklahoma that they had a major free agent. Like, it's bleak there.
All right, let's take a break. Coming up, another team says no thanks to Des Bryant. Next time, First Things First.
We got a report.
To you. Welcome back to First Things First. I was right there.
I'm trying to defend you, Jenna.
We'll keep that one off the air.
It was wrong what they did to you yesterday, Jenna.
I get poked fun at oftentimes. We don't need to get into details.
Never happens.
And Chris Canty was watching the show and came to my defense. And for that, I say you are hands down my favorite guest on the show.
I got your back, Jenna. Even though sometimes you make things a little awkward.
Yeah. That's the way I've been doing it since birth, Chris.
That's her brand. That's on brand.
Yes. Unfortunately, it is all legit. Like, I don't try to.
But really
The boss said lean into it, Jenna.
Yeah. Lean in.
And I've been doing it. Half the time I'm clueless about it.
You're doing great.
Which is why I embrace it. But thank you very much. So, Chris Canty, appreciate you being here. Anything you say is gold and wise.
Canty looking good today.
He does. That's a great looking suit.
I got to keep up with you guys.
Black don't crack. We're the best dressed show in television.
Oh, for sure.
So
come on with it.
That's close.
Are happening.
Let's do this part of it.
Another day.
Another black dress.
Another team not interested in Des Bryant. Don't take it personally, Des. None of the teams are interested in me, so at least we both have that in common. Cowboys said no, Giants said no, and now apparently the Ravens said no. At last count, we're down to 29 teams. The Ravens, who were previously reported to be interested in Des, signed former Saints receiver Willie Snead. So, Chris Canty, what does Des Bryant's future in the NFL look like?
Well, Jenna, Des Bryant is going to have a job. He's just going to have to wait until we get past this weekend in the NFL draft because teams are solidifying their boards. They're trying to make their concrete draft plans, and they'll deal with veterans that are on the open market afterward, after they see what players they're able to acquire, more importantly, who's not able to address the specific needs at the wide receiver position in the draft. So Des is going to have a job. I still think he's a player that's capable of contributing, but when you look at the timing of the release, that's why I had a problem with it when the Dallas Cowboys did it, because if they were going to move on from Des Bryant and it's clear that there were some chemistry issues that players and coaches were concerned with, they were going to move on from him because they didn't try to restructure the contract, they should have done it and gave him an opportunity to get to free agency at the top of the market when teams were doling out those big contracts to guys like Sammy Watkins in free agency. Des Bryant should have had that opportunity. He's led the Dallas Cowboys in career touchdowns receptions. You don't treat somebody that was able to produce for your franchise like that by releasing him a month and a half after free agency starts.
And supposedly the relationship that he had, Jerry said it was one of the hardest decisions he had. Jason Garrett said, I love him. If you love a person, then you give them the opportunity that would be best for them. Dallas did what was best for their personal situation. So for me, from a PR standpoint, yeah, they said all the right things, but they didn't regard Des and what was best for him when they released him. The other thing that people should watch is because we're going through the NFL draft process. All of us have been through that process. Sometimes we forget as veteran players that what we have on film is one thing, but also the intel that scouts and other people in the NFL world, that intel that they got on us coming into the league, that follows us just like our medical chart. So Des, his overall athleticism, it has gone down. Des has not evolved as a route runner. But also, there's some things off the field, too. When he came into the league, there was someone who who was with Dez to make sure he got the meetings and stuff on time, make sure he got the work on time. That's still with him too. So when you start to see teams not interested in Dez, we can't forget the draft process and all the intel and information that follows a player besides their video and the injury report, all right? That information goes to other teams too.
And that information is something that I get frustrated because you mentioned earlier, Cris, one of my closest friends. Cris gets a bad rap on something from Dez Bryant. Dez thinks Cris Carter's so mean to me on TV. Cris Carter's against me on TV. Cris has been kinder and gentler with this player, given those off-the-field things that people in the NFL know, but are not in a position to say, report on, or say on television. But
off-the-field things Dez are involved in.
But know to be true, but will not torch a guy by going on TV and talking about it. Cris has been more careful with that, with this player, than any player in the time I've known him. And I only say that partially in defense of my friend, but also because it's apropos to this conversation. Because while Cris is in the know, he's not the omniscient, all-knowing everything. If Cris knows it, it's not because he was hiring a private investigator. It's because someone in the league has told him. Sure. And that means the guys who are making these league decisions know it. Because from a purely football perspective, we can criticize, listen, Dez was 88th in the league in yards after catch. He was 33rd out of 36 qualifying receivers on reception percentage. Those are bad numbers, but you don't mind having a guy who's 28th in the league in yards as long as he's not first in the league in salary. If he's around 28th in salary, you can deal with it. It's the off-the-field stuff that, to me, has made the Giants not even consider it. It's the in-the-locker-room off-the-field stuff that has made him a tougher sell for other teams that maybe people think Dez, maybe the average fan thinks Dez is further past than fairly or unfairly teams in the league think.
Cris, yesterday we reported that the Giants were reportedly going to pass on Dez Bryant, and there were some rumors circulating that the Giants were maybe interested in him. There was a video that he and Odell were working out together. As a former Giant, how did that news land with you that there was a possibility Dez could have played for the Giants? Would he have fit in? Were you surprised that they passed?
Well, I didn't think that the Giants would be interested in it. Knowing Dave Gettleman, that's not the personality that he would want to bring into his locker room. He's already got some chemistry issues that he's trying to clean up from last year, and Dez Bryant is a mercurial personality, no doubt. And so when you have that type of player that's emotional coming off of a situation with the Dallas Cowboys and vocalizing the fact that he wanted to stay in the division, I don't know that that's the attitude that you want to introduce to a locker room given where the Giants are right now. So I think that the Giants were doing the right thing by passing on Dez Bryant. And I think a lot of teams around the National Football League are looking at the situation and saying maybe Dez Bryant needs to cool down from this decision before he can evaluate and make the best decision for him from a football perspective.
So that's interesting. How much stock do other teams, CC, weigh these three passing on Dez Bryant when they go to decide whether to bring him in, or does it not factor in at all?
It doesn't necessarily factor into what they're doing. Each team is evaluating on their own merit, on the information that they have. They're going to trust the intel that they have on the player more. But you have to realize that teams, especially with wide receiver groupings and talking to owners, and Jerry Jones in particular, I talked to him after we drafted Randy Moss. And Randy had the tremendous year. We torched him on Thanksgiving. And Jerry, we had a very frank conversation. And I asked Jerry, how can you pass on Randy Moss? And he said at the time, he was still having issues with Michael Irvin, and he couldn't bring those two in the same locker room. But if he had me in the locker room, and at that point, I was a little beyond where Michael was, and Dennis Green, the organization, felt like I was the perfect landing spot or the person to be tandem with Randy Moss. Jerry Jones told me that himself. The reason why he didn't draft Randy Moss was because the locker room that he had and situations in that locker room. Other people in the NFL, because he's such a public figure, you have to do the research. And in doing the research, I'm sure that certain people are going to decide either there's a reason why Sammy Watkins got signed in Kansas City. There's a reason why Dallas went with Allen Hurns. There's a reason why Chicago went with Allen Robinson. The one thing all three of these guys have in common, there's two things they all got in common. They're young, they're injured, but off the field, they don't have question marks about them. So we much rather take a guy who hasn't been as productive and has maybe some potential,
but less to worry about in that locker room.
Well, and the Odell factor. If Odell were Larry Fitzgerald, then maybe this is a different situation in New York. If you're Larry Fitzgerald is still a very good player, but forget the age part of it.
Yeah.
But that composure and the lack of anything off the field.
Just like Arizona, they went to Larry as a businessman. Larry, you're a little beyond your prime. We'd love to have you in your career here. You need to take less money. And that's what Larry Fitzgerald has done the last several years so he could extend his career.
And he's still a highly productive player, but he's also a guy you don't worry about. If we bring in this wide receiver, he and Larry are going to be combustible.
No.
As much as...
As long as you don't pay him more money than Larry. Larry cool with that.
Chris,
Exactly.
stick around. We're going to talk a little Patriots here on the other side. Will Tom Brady ever retire? His agent doesn't seem to think so. Next on First Things First. Tom Brady retirement talk has begun to sweep the nation as a result of him visiting Qatar and missing practice. Well, now Tom Brady's agent, Don Yee, has chimed in, and he says Brady will play this season, and he will play into his mid-40s or until he feels he isn't playing at a championship level. Well, that should just about settle every single doubt. Chris, how much should Brady's plans impact the Patriots' draft plans, do you think?
I don't think it should impact the Patriots' draft plans even a little bit. And coming into this draft, I thought that the Patriots would look for a successor to Tom Brady. I still believe they'll do that.
Right.
Even though I do think Tom Brady is capable of playing into his 40s. I don't know if he's going to play till he's 45, but could I see him playing until 42, 43? Yeah, I absolutely could. But that being said, the Patriots have been the model for consistency for the last couple of decades in the NFL. And the only way to be able to maintain that consistency is by finding a successor for the most important position on the football field, which is the quarterback position. Now, they've got 2 first-round picks, 23 and 31, and they've got 2 second-round picks. So you have a lot of draft capital. If you see value to be able to move up and get a guy, then that would make sense. But they don't necessarily have to, and we've seen that the Patriots have drafted quarterbacks in the second and third rounds in the last few years in trying to make sure that they do have capable backups and somebody to step in if and when Tom Brady leaves. I don't know when they're going to get a quarterback, but I do expect them to address the quarterback position in the draft this year.
Do you think Tom Brady's heir apparent is sitting in the draft this year?
I think it's possible. We don't know that definitively, but I think it's possible, and it all depends on who the Patriots and Bill Belichick and Josh McDaniels have a conviction on. We'll see what happens, but it does make sense when you have this kind of draft capital to try to address the quarterback position. They've got the successor in the head coach because Josh McDaniels came back. He didn't take the coach job. He'll be the head coach of the New England Patriots at some point in the foreseeable future, but you've got to address who's going to be your quarterback, who you're going to hand the baton to after Tom Brady. You want that situation like what happened in Green Bay in the late 2000s with Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers, or what happened in the 90s with the 49ers and Joe Montana and Steve Young.
You mentioned a very important situation. That's the Josh McDaniels. I believe even if Josh is not there, then New England's going to go into this with those 4 picks, the first and the second round. They're going to go in and try to get themselves a quarterback. Now you have Josh coming back. Whatever promises him and Kraft came to with each other, like I know coming out of this draft, Josh, if he is thinking about being the quarterback, the head coach of the future for New England.
He wants a quarterback.
The quarterback of the New England Patriots is sitting there on draft day. He's in college football right now. He's getting ready to get drafted into the pros. So, Jenna, I'm with you. Yes, I do believe that. I do believe in the first or second round, the heir apparent to Tom Brady will come from this draft. Now, I don't feel like they have to force it. I do feel like they can play their hand because there's other holes that they need filled that are more important than Tom Brady. And what's that? They need a left tackle right now. Yesterday. Now, Tom Brady, he's a key component to this in the future of the quarterback position. That's probably the second component in this draft that's got to be taken care of. You cannot leave the draft round 1 and 2 if you're the New England Patriots and not have a left tackle and the heir apparent to Tom Brady when he decides to walk away.
All right, so I believe they are going to draft a quarterback sometime in the top 65 picks. But allow me for a moment to make the argument against doing that. Because we always talk about these heir apparent plans, and I think it's, when we look at the history of it, a little overrated. So let's talk about the most recent one, okay? Manning to Luck. In real time, had the Indianapolis Colts decided, you know what we're doing with that number 1 pick? We saw the package you got for the number 2 pick that year in RG3. We are flipping that. We are keeping Peyton Manning, and we are going to try to go win Super Bowls with this Hall of Fame quarterback. Guess what? Peyton Manning went on to 2 more Super Bowls and won 1. Andrew Luck, we don't know what his future will hold. The heir apparent in Green Bay situation, we're going to hand the baton off. Aaron Rodgers is as talented as a quarterback as I've ever seen. He's been to and he's won one Super Bowl. Steve Young, who set the all-time quarterback rating record, he went to and won one Super Bowl. It is so hard in this league to win a single Super Bowl that if you're a team like the Patriots that is going to go into next year as the favorite, you can make a strong argument. If the whole goal is to just, what did Robert Kraft tell you? Just win championships. Then what do you care if you win it in 2018 or 2023? If the whole goal is to win championships, you can't convince me you will ever be better positioned to win championships than right now with Tom Brady as your quarterback. So use all your draft capital.
But there would be an argument, too, with so many young players, Nick, and so many holes, that if you don't replace Tom Brady, you're setting yourself up in this window of 2 years. Your probability of winning the championship, goes up 10%? But after that, your probability goes way, way down to being an 8-8 football team. So you have to be able to measure that. Kraft is doing this in real time. He's not on the clock that Belichick is on. He's not on the clock that Brady's on. So he's running the organization. I believe his time clock wins out over the current regime that's there.
And see, I never want to be in that position which you're talking about, 7-9, 8-8 with no quarterback. That's called quarterback hell. You're not bad enough to be at the top of the draft to find where most franchise quarterbacks are drafted at, and you're not in a situation where you're competitive and you're getting into the postseason. So you've got to make sure that you solidify that position. And the other thing that you have to factor in, Nick, is that Tom Brady is 40 years old. Like, at what point are we going to see a drop in his production? Because if you look at it, the odds are against Tom Brady being able to replicate the kind of season that he had last year. All you have to do is look at Brett Favre and what he did in his last couple of years. He went to the Pro Bowl when they went to that NFC Championship game against the Saints. Then he fell off a cliff in 2010. So you don't know when that's going to happen. So it just makes sense to be able to have a quarterback in place for if and when that happens.
It makes sense for a well-oiled machine like New England. But also, let's not forget, your exit strategy from Tom Brady, you messed that up already. You gave Jimmy Garoppolo away. So you're looking at this like, okay, right now, let's not do this. But they're looking at this, we already blew our opportunity with Jimmy Garoppolo. We could have extended him and had him here. So it's just like the Cleveland Browns. When you've made a mistake in the 17 draft not getting a quarterback, when you've made a mistake in the 2016 not getting a quarterback, it becomes important with that number one selection that you get your quarterback of the future. New England botched the exchange of who would be the next quarterback by not keeping Jimmy Garoppolo. And they must be able to try to fix that through this year's draft.
Every time I bring that up, it's always met with they were never going to pay him that money. It was never going to happen. So basically, Tom Brady botched it by playing and having an MVP caliber season. Had he done what he was supposed to do at age 39, 40, which is kind of like crop the bed a little bit for the first 6 weeks, then you say, all right, we see that he's not going to finish out the season the way we have Jimmy Garoppolo re-sign him.
The third option is get Jimmy Garoppolo signed to an extension before the year at well under what the market value ended up being.
How is that not even an option?
Well, I think it was. I think his agent, who's also Brady's agent, by the way,
they got some pushback.
Right, correctly assumed what the market would be. His agent had a good idea. You know what? If we wait this thing out, they're not going to be able to franchise him because they're not going to have the cap space for it. And he will hit free agency. I don't think he thought he was going to get $27.5 million a year, but he knew he was going to get more than what the Patriots were offering him. So there was no way they could have handled it perfectly because Brady just kept extending his prime. I think you can make the argument, try to win your Super Bowls right now, but I understand your point. Robert Kraft is like, I'm not selling this team in 3 years. I don't ever want to be the Jets. I want to consistently be near the top of the league.
Did you have fun today?
I had a great time. As always, though.
As always.
I always have a good time hanging out.
You and I should hang out sometime. It would be as awkward as this, but outside.
Don't do it.
It would be like...
Don't
do
it,
just
Canty.
do it. Just do it.
Don't.
Canty, do it. Do it, Canty. Canty, do it.
Show up, she's going to have you pulling a truck or something.
Coming up, I'll be in the truck.
She's going to have you burpees in the corner.
The Rockets nearly made NBA history last night. Next on First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolfe, and thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Make sure to subscribe and tell your friends, family, and coworkers about the podcast, which, by the way, is available on iTunes and all your favorite podcast apps. You can catch a fresh new episode every Monday through Friday on FS1, starting at 6:30 a.m. Eastern, 3:30 a.m. Pacific. So long, everyone.